What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Monday morning to you, and welcome back to our devotional series. We are in our walk through the book of James. We're in James chapter 4 today. We kick off that. There's only 5 chapters in the book of James. We're in chapter 4, but I had this idea of what if we read the book of James over and over and over again, because you can really take on James 1 Monday, James 2 Tuesday, James 3 Thursday, on and on. I said that wrong. But you get my point, though. There's 5 chapters. There's 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday, and you could read the book of James over and over and over again. And so since it's Monday, pause this. Go read James chapter 1. It's really, really good. It takes you no more than a couple minutes to read through it. And then today, though, we're in James chapter 4, and he starts a new kind of series of thoughts, and his thoughts are on why you fight. Why you fight. I want you to think about that. Because we all have had battles in life, whether we were fighting with a spouse, we were fighting with a family member, we were fighting with a sibling, a friend, a roommate, a coworker, something. We get into fights. And he actually addresses fighting and arguing and conflict. It's brilliant. And we're going to maybe even stay the whole week on this idea here. So he says this, he goes, where do battles and fights come from? He goes, do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You want, but you don't have. You lust and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. And you ask and don't receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity or opposition with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Now it keeps going, and I think he kind of unpacks the solution to your conflicts and your battles. But let's just begin with, why do you battle at all? Why do you fight at all? And I love what James says. James says something that is so simple, but yet so profound. And there are many times in life that when I'm angry and I'm about to get into an argument and a fight and debate somebody, I'll do this, and it's the most amazing thing in the world. I'll sit back and say, Todd, do you know why you're angry? And the answer is this. It's right here in verse 2. It goes, because you want something and you didn't get it. That's why you're angry. You're angry because you wanted something and you didn't get it. And what it helps me realize is that more than likely, I might be a bit childish in terms of why I want to argue and why I want to fight. And what I actually want to fight about is not worth fighting about. It's not even that big of a deal. And so let's go back to the first verse, though. He goes, where do these battles and fights come from? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war within you? I think what James is going to address here is you being more aware of your wants and your desires. I think that any person who's walking with Christ, as you walk deeper and deeper and longer with Christ, you're going to get to a point where you recognize not all of my desires, not all of my intents are actually godly. They're not actually divine. They're not actually Christ-like. And so I have to be unbelievably aware of my wants and desires, because every time I'm not getting what I want, I'm usually getting angry about it and I'm stirring up conflict. And I think one of the things that he points to is like, hey, check your wanter. Let's start there. Check your desires. Because he goes, first of all, your desire is just for pleasure. And it's like, okay, well, one of the mature things you come to recognize is this, is that the purpose of life is not pleasure. The purpose of life is not just pure happiness in the moment. That God's plan for your life is so much deeper than temporary pleasure or temporary happiness. And so if I lived a life where I just in the moment wanted to do something that made me happy, I would have had ice cream for breakfast. But we know that actually is not wise, not good, and has some long-term destructive kind of qualities to them. And so I have to be very, very aware of my desires. And now watch this. This is the reason why I know this. He goes, you ask and don't receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your own pleasure. So again, what he's pointing out is that a lot of the stuff that you desire, so I said you have to check your desires and your wants. Some of my wants are highly selfish, definitely not selfless, and they're selfish, not divine. They're not godly. And so I have to be careful about the motive of my heart. And then watch, I think he doubles down on this idea, because by verse 4 he says, do you not know that friendship with the world is to be in opposition with God? And whoever wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. I think what he's addressing is that you've got to be so careful to check your desires and your wants, because so many of your desires and wants are selfish. They're based on your pleasures, and they have to do something with this world, this ungodly fallen culture and world that we live in. And he goes, if you don't check your desires and wants and make sure that your desires and wants match up with God, you're constantly going to be frustrated, angry, and then in battles and in conflicts. I'm going to give you one more verse as we close today. Psalms 37:4, I believe it is, says that we should delight ourselves in the Lord, and that he shall give us the desires of our heart. I don't think that means if we delight ourselves in God that he gives us whatever we want. I think if we delight ourselves in God, he gives us the wants that we should want to have. Let me say that again, that if we delight ourselves in God, he's going to give us the wants that we ought to want to have. And so that's what I want us to check ourselves on this Monday morning is hey, why am I angry? Why am I getting into fights and conflicts and arguments? It's because I'm not getting what I want. But let me first check what I want. Is what I want selfish, about my pleasure, my happiness? Is it something to do with the world and culture and these things of the world that don't last, these temporal things? And if that's the case, then I need to have a heart check and re-examine the desires of my heart. Can I get an amen to that? Challenging message today, but watch this. Tuesday through Friday here, we're going to unpack what do we do once we figure out how to get over those battles and conflicts. So I love you guys. God bless you, church. I will see you tomorrow.